You better check this twice. Hey, I am Chuck the Bureaucrat, and today I'm going to recommend a technique for your military transition that I like to call double tap. All right. I'm just being a little quirky with some wordplay here, but what I mean is you should plan to attend the Transition Assistance Program, TAP, twice. The first time should be 24 months before you plan to retire, long before you actually have your retirement orders in hand. And the second time should be 8 to 9 months before you officially retire. This is once you have your orders and you know what that magical date is going to be. And there are a couple of reasons why I recommend that you use this approach. You've heard me say that you have to build your own transition plan. Partly, that's because only you can set the right goals for your plan, put your plan into the right context, and when it all comes down to it, you have to be the one to execute your plan. But another reason that you have to build your own retirement plan is because the rules governing the retirement process are always changing. So one of the big reasons to apply double tap is to use that first session kind of like a recon. You want to get the lay of the land, understand the terrain before you have to maneuver on the terrain. You want to understand what the major decisions are so you can start planning for them in advance and you don't get overwhelmed when you run into them. In fact, if you and your family can decide what to do about some of the big issues like survivor benefit program and TRICARE, well, it takes a lot of the pressure off the last minute stuff. And then, as you get closer to your retirement, well, then you can deal with the more nitpicky things. For instance, programs that might be very important to your particular transition plan, but they don't get much airtime during the standard TAP briefings. Another reason to do double tap is simply to stimulate your thinking. Take a couple hours and just listen to people talking about the process. Get a blank sheet of paper and start sketching out what's really important to you. You're going to hear people say that retirement is a process, and part of the reason that that's true is that it just takes time for your brain to break down and digest all the different parts it has to deal with. And so, if you start early, you get a huge advantage in starting to get your head wrapped around everything you need to think about. The next advantage about doing double tap is that it sends a useful and important message to your leadership. Back when I was in uniform, I had this rule of thumb that I tended to use when I was dealing with people who would talk about their retirement plan. If they talked about retirement as something that would happen 3 or more years in the future, I tended to figure that they were no more likely to retire than just about anybody else. I certainly did not make internal organizational plans to deal with their retirement. But when they started talking about their retirement in terms of months, like, I think I'm going to retire in 24 to 27 months, well, there is a man with a plan. And I started making my own plans about how to deal with things once they were gone. And while your leadership may not think about it the way I did, I will tell you that when you schedule yourself for that first TAP meeting, they start doing their own transition planning. They start thinking about the day when you're not around anymore. Just between you and me, it's kind of beneficial if your leadership starts to come to grips with your eventual departure. Oh, and that brings me to one final benefit of this whole double tap idea. The brass loves to throw a monkey wrench into your whole transition process, and one of the ways they do this is by manufacturing some kind of last-minute crisis that disrupts your TAP classes. And that can be a real problem if you only have 6 months left on active duty and you haven't even started. But if you got 28 months left to go, well, those kind of shenanigans are less of a big deal. You can just catch the next class. So wherever you are in your military transition process, I strongly recommend that you schedule yourself for that first TAP class as soon as possible, and that you do that with the express intent of going back a second time as you get closer to your transition. And now, if you want to see one of the reasons that I think it's really, really important to build your own transition plan, watch this video.